I'd like to discuss a difficult topic on female narcissism, which seems to be not well understood in our current culture. But from my own experiences and relationships, I'm now 38. I have noticed a growing trend and have realized the ignorance of most of the public, including myself, on this topic, as well as the fact that narcissism is not gender specific. It's not just men that are narcissists. It's not just females. And it's not just overt, meaning it's obvious to see on the outside. There are covert narcissists as well. And I'd like to start by going over some of the behavioral traits and characteristics of specifically a female narcissist. And you can look this up online. There's a lot of information out there now on the subject. This one is from Mom Junction, some website I found. I went through the behavioral traits and characteristics, and they're accurate. Now, am I a psychologist? No, I'm not. Have I studied it for the last 10 years of my life? Yes. But I'm a victim of it. I can say that. I've had a front row seat to multiple women with this quote unquote disorder. And I know that because I'm a scientist and I've been trained to recognize patterns. And if you study narcissistic behavioral traits, what they're describing there are patterns of human behavior. So if you can understand these traits, it can hopefully protect you from what I'm about to describe. So I'm just going to read this for starters. Narcissistic women lack sensitivity and the ability to empathize with others. As their fake confidence bellies their fragile ego. Yeah, I did not read that correctly. A narcissistic personality disorder is a condition in which the person considers themselves to be too important and superior to others. That is at the foundation of how they think and how they respond to almost everything. It is because they dwell in their bubble of superiority and are unable to handle even the slightest criticism, which I can attest to. Dealing with such a woman can easily take a toll on your mental health. Read on to know about the common traits of a narcissistic woman. So let's go through it. There's 14 traits of a narcissistic woman. Let's go over number 1. She refuses to accept interpersonal boundaries. A narcissistic woman does not respect boundaries in any relationship. She is self-centered and egotistical, which leads her to think she deserves preferential treatment over others, disrespecting your need for personal space. She enjoys putting you in a spot by often crossing the line. For instance, if you are caught up with a problem in your family or among your friends, she would insist you drop everything, claiming I should come first in your life. It's almost as if a couple of my exes wrote that themselves. It's painfully accurate, to say the least. Anyone that's been involved in this and has been subject to it can relate. Number 2, this is the sadistic aspect of their personality. She takes pleasure in your pain. A lot of people find it hard to grasp that a woman could ever be that way, and I would agree, like, it's very hard to imagine that that is the case. But from my own experience, that was not only the case, but it was terrifying to what levels she was willing to go to create pain. And how she would respond to that was usually mocking, laughing, and more intimidation and threats. This is one of the weird things narcissists do. They call it weird. It's sadistic. She suffers from low self-esteem. That is very true. They will never tell you that. They're always trying to butter up their ego and let you know how important they are, so it's hard to see at first. And they might even conceal that from you for a period of time, or maybe even a long time, in my case. To feel better, she tries to put others down, which I did have those red flags initially. The way she put others down, though, was passive-aggressive and seemed justified based on the accusations that she had created, which I did not know she was creating. She makes snide remarks and overly criticizes to make you feel inferior. For example, after you miss out on a promotion, she says, "Honestly, I saw this coming. You've never really had the drive for something like that." I can't relate to that specific experience, but I have multiple experiences where that was a daily ritual for her to do, to continually try to cut down my esteem and let me know how worthless I was, especially without her. And this I couldn't relate to anymore. Even when you share your achievements with her, she displays haughty and arrogant behavior and brushes your accomplishments off as unimportant. I'm going to add to that. Not only will she make arrogant, comments, and she'll try to compete with you and say that you are being arrogant by even letting her know what happened in your daily life. And if that involves a promotion or any kind of achievement whatsoever, they quickly revert to telling you how you couldn't have done it without them, as if before you even finish what you're stating. Confidence, if you show any level of confidence or even gratification in anything that you've done, you are being selfish, and you immediately need to adore them and tell them exactly how much you couldn't have done it without them, regardless of whether or not it's true. In my case, it was despite her best action that I still succeeded in what I was trying to do. And it took arguing and insistence from me to even try to achieve it. And once it was achieved, all the credit went to her, to her audience. And I'm still finding out from other people what level she went to reinforce that. Number 3, she tries to ruin your other relationships. This couldn't have been more true in my case. I found out after we had gone through our divorce that she had personally texted people through my phone to tell them to stop contacting me because I was married. She went to our neighbor where we had bought our house and told her not to talk to me. She was an older woman, said that I was abusive and violent. I had a discussion with that neighbor after we both moved out of the house. I had to keep mowing the lawn because we were trying to sell it. She came up to me because she thought I looked like a respectable gentleman. We had a nice 2-hour-long conversation to discover that she was saying a whole lot of stuff to her that made her concerned. And she even told me she does not like being told who and who she cannot talk to. She also apologized to me by the end of that conversation and let me know that she thought I was a very nice young man and apologized for everything that I was going through. She was also a friend of her family, which I did not know because I had never met her. I never had the chance to. So, a female narcissist would like to keep you under her control at any cost. And so she ensures to create a rift between you and your dear ones. She does this by spreading rumors about you or by causing misunderstanding and miscommunication between you and others. She did this with my own personal family as well, and her family, by stating that I never wanted to join any functions, when in reality she kept telling me at home that she was sick or couldn't go, and then was saying I was selfish if I wanted to go alone because I needed to care for her. Janet Christie, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, writes about her experience with a narcissistic colleague who, she says, tried to one-up her in every situation. That is so true. She says, "Once I was having a very serious conversation with our boss. This was, of course, when the narcissist and I were peers before she became my supervisor. She came into the room, sat on the edge of our boss's desk and said, 'I had a dream about you last night.' She was not only competing with me, she was also attaching herself to the more important person in the room, our boss." This couldn't be more accurate. Number 4, she talks about She talks only about herself. This was a red flag from the beginning. However, she was in a very difficult situation. She had lost her sister, in fact, to a heroin overdose. Her sister had a child whom her grandparents were taking care of and trying to cut the ex-husband out of the picture, which was, I found out later, very malicious and is exactly what they're trying to do to me and our son right now. Using lies and slander, creating stories. So in this case, she talks only about herself. Talking highly of herself is what a narcissistic woman loves to do. She is so self-absorbed, smug, and self-obsessed that she will exaggerate her achievements and create a grand but false image of herself. After we had bought the house, I immediately started renovating our 550 square foot kitchen. Despite her best efforts to get me to stop working on it, as I maintained my 50-hour-a-week career position in engineering, I was able to complete it 90% of the way within a year, which to me was a great achievement. I found out later she was telling everyone that if it wasn't for her, I would have never got it done. And in fact, I was lazy. I was a pothead even. That I was not taking care of our son. I was not taking care of her. I was always absent. And yet somehow our kitchen still got done. And somehow she still claimed credit for it, which I don't know how that's even possible. She leaves out details. She creates details that probably made it seem that way. She will convince you that she is highly desirable. She's a highly desirable woman so that you admire her. For instance, she dominates the conversation for an entire hour at dinner with friends, constantly bringing it back to her own work achievements while barely acknowledging anyone else's stories. Now, she hid this from me, this personality trait, and played like she was humble until we were married and had our son and got our first house. I did not see any red flags for that, but after everything that I just described, it became very obvious that's what she was about. So that was actually concealed from me. Number 5, she plays the victim card. For a narcissistic woman, her life struggles and pain are bigger than anyone else's. This would be her sister's tragedy and the family's tragedy, unfortunately, which I sympathize with. And it was often used as a method to play victim in every single argument she would create, using that as the reason for her not being in the right state of mind. She may not be boastful of her difficulties in life, but when you try to share your problems, she will divert the topic to her problems and make herself look like a martyr. So true. For example, when you bring up a concern about her behavior, she responds, "You have no idea what I've been through." That's an exact quote that I heard repeatedly. "No one has ever supported me, and now you're turning on me too." She didn't say those exact words, but it was implied passive aggressively. Because how could I possibly understand losing a sister and then having her nephew taken away by the father, who was this terrible person who was quite literally just trying to escape the family for obvious reasons? I should have taken that as a red flag sign. I didn't. Now, you may think I'm stupid, but you don't find all this stuff out until you've made commitments. And if it's being concealed from you and there is tragedy involved, it was hard for me to distinguish between crazy, manipulative, and this person has a real heart and is going through real tragedy and could use my support and help. So I guess shame on the victim for being a human, right? Don't shame the person that's manipulative. That got away with all this, by the way. Number 6, she blames you for her mistakes. A narcissistic woman believes she never makes a mistake. Yeah, you're the one that makes the mistake in the end, no matter how much she was in control of everything, which is what they demand at the same time. They take control of everything, they make a lot of mistakes, and you're the one that was the reason for it. I have dozens of examples for that one. So when something goes wrong, it most certainly has to be the other person. There you go. She will never admit her mistakes, and look for ways to push the blame on someone else. That was me in this case. For instance, if she forgets an important occasion like an anniversary, she shifts the blame onto you, claiming you didn't remind her enough to, or accuses you of not making her feel valued. It's great. Professional gaslighting. Number 7, she cannot tolerate slights. If a narcissistic woman ever finds you criticizing her or speaking ill of her, she quickly defends herself. She overreacts in such a manner that it makes you feel bad and guilty for doubting her. For example, when you casually mention she's running late, she reacts angrily saying, "How could you call me out like that? I have so much going on," and makes you feel guilty for mentioning it. I have lots of examples of that, and it started on our wedding night. During the wedding day, I had 3 members of her family come up to me with shock in their eyes, calling her a bridezilla. That night, I questioned as to why that would be said, and that's when I first started noticing I may have married someone that is not being honest with me. She got very angry, extremely angry, that I would, quote, go behind her back like it was my action. They came to me, I did not go to them. And would talk illy of my wife, which I did not. That's what they were saying about her. I was questioning why that would be the case. I never got straight answers. I only got punishments. The first punishment, banishing me to the couch. That should have been a red flag, right? Well, we had those discussions. I tried to plead with her or have conversations with her, which she allowed. I didn't see it as her allowing it. I saw it as someone that was still in distress over losing her sister. She had also quit some bad habits, including drinking, which she did. I fully believe she had quit. Her personality had shifted dramatically after that. It could have been just a show. I will never know. But that was my first big red flag. And I even questioned getting an annulment at that time. But as soon as we had the discussion, she reverted right back to the loss of her sister and would do anything to make the marriage work, which, I made a commitment. I wanted that too. Not having understood what covert narcissism was, and that's what I'm going to go into next. This is just behavioral traits of a narcissist. Covert narcissism has its own characteristics. Number 8, she has no regard for your feelings. Showing no empathy is a distinctive hallmark of narcissistic people. Caring for you is not something that comes easily to them. You may be having a fever, but she still complains about you falling ill the day she wants to spend time with you. She guilt trips you into doing things the way she wants it. Okay, I mentioned that I was renovating a 550 square foot kitchen while maintaining a 50-hour-a-week position in manufacturing engineering, and we just had our first son. I would spend the nights with him, at least an hour or two, as much as she would allow me. I didn't know why she didn't want me to some nights. It didn't make sense to me. I found out later why. But even with all that, going between the house and the shed, I was cutting a lot of lumber. We also had a lot of deer that would go in the back lawn. I ended up getting a tick bite right in my crotch, believe it or not, and I had no idea until I had a ring that formed. I went to the doctors and found out that I had Lyme disease. Not only did I have Lyme disease and go on my first cycle of doxycycline, the antibiotic, I also got COVID the same week. I did not miss one day of work. I still tried to work on the house, and I took the weekends off. It was a Saturday and half a Sunday, and used that time to spend with my son, except during the COVID portion of it, because I didn't want him to get COVID. She complained every single hour of the day of how lazy I was, how uncaring I was, how manipulative I was. During that, I had absolutely no energy. In fact, I'm still recovering from it. It's been 3 years now. and I still have energy issues and other skin related issues from it. I haven't fully recovered from it. My health has been different since. I do know that. And that's when it changed. Anyway, that's how she treated me during it. She hated that I was sick. She despised me. She let me know that. Number 9, she swings between idealizing and devaluating. So true. Idealizing means you praise, you build up, you worship this person. They're the best. They're like your own personal cheerleader. You're the best thing that could have ever happened to them. And then devaluating is they start tearing you down and making you feel as if you couldn't do one thing right in your life. During the initial days, a narcissistic woman will love bomb you. Love bombing, that's a good study. Whenever they want to get their way, if they want something from you, the first thing that they will do is butter you up. And how do they do that? They tell you how much they love you and how much they care for you and how much you do for them and how much they appreciate it. Just to find out that they're asking you for something in the end. And if you do give it to them, you are the worst manipulative lowlife that they've ever met. Okay, so let's read that again. A narcissistic woman will love bomb you and get you addicted to her affection and attention. I never got addicted. This is when I started finding out who she was and what the pattern was. Because again, I've been trained to recognize patterns. She only did it to me twice before I started realizing that this was just a game. Once she feels you have grown dependent on them, she will swiftly pull the rug from under your feet. She enjoys playing with emotions by idealizing and devaluing you. That was true. I never got addicted to it, and the frustration in her eyes and in her actions grew exponentially. We were only married for 2.5 years, or 2 years, I think. That's all it took. I knew her for 6 years before that. We were together for 8 years total. For 6 years, most of these behavioral traits were completely concealed. They all came out after marriage, after our first son. They started to come out when she was pregnant. She gave me a list of things that I needed to do to make her feel more comfortable and happy. And that involved me maintaining my 50-hour-a-week position in my career, coming home and cleaning up all the messes she would make, doing all the laundry, cleaning all the dishes, and keeping everything neat and organized. During the day, she would mess it all up, tell me that she had ADD, and she was just so stressed because of the baby, and then it turned into health issues, which I found out later were just made up. This was before I found out that she was also having an affair, which happened right after we had our first son. She still thinks I don't know about it. I have evidence to show that there was a guy in my house when I was at work, tracking muddy footprints, going to her bedroom, which I have on video, as she left our son out in the kitchen playing with things that he shouldn't have been playing with, when I wasn't allowed to leave him for 2 seconds or even turn my back for a second without getting screamed at. This is how these people operate. Number 10, she is materialistic. Oh yeah. She gave me a lot of Christmas presents and would spend thousands on it. Most of it was my money that I was making from my income. This was before we were married, but after we were married, that remained true. When this divorce happened, they all went missing. She claimed that she didn't even know what I was talking about when I asked where they went. One included a laptop she gave to me for work. I used it for work for years and had a lot of proprietary information on there. She pretended like the laptop never even existed and still has it to this day. I was never able to get the police to agree to having her hand it over because she claimed that I was lying entirely about all of it. And it worked. The outer appearance and public image are extremely important for a narcissistic woman, and so her love is also concerned with only material benefits and taking advantage of others. Once the benefits dry up, so does her love. She does not get involved with someone who has nothing beneficial to offer. For example, she shows excitement when you take her to luxurious places or buy her gifts, but in case you are not able to continue the same, she pulls away and says, I deserve someone who can give me more than this. That's very true. She used to tell me right before we even got separated, all the men that wanted to F her and would even tell me when she would have sex with them to see how I would react. She would also call her ex-boyfriends on the phone and talk about their previous sexual experiences right next to where I slept as I was caring for our son. She also told me I could not leave the house with our son. She would claim that I was under the influence of things I was not. I made a point never to do that. And yet, at the same time, she was getting blackout drunk with our son in her care, which I eventually left the house for, and then I got punished as a result by authorities. Number 11, she believes everyone envies her. This couldn't be more true. Everyone. When I bought her a wedding ring, I insisted that I be the one to pick it out for her because I like to surprise. I was more of a romantic in my relationships. I like giving gifts and showing that I cared enough to pick out something that they would want. She met up with one of my ex-friends who was a woman who convinced me that I was wrong for insisting on that. That was a big red flag for both that friendship and this relationship. I know that now. I knew it then. Wasn't big enough for me to really be that concerned because she was concealing all the other behavioral traits. I'm not completely innocent in all this. I realize that in the fact that I should have picked up more of this. But I was also going through my own challenges at the time. And I also had never met a woman that had just lost their sister to a heroin overdose. And someone that was this convincing that they were real, that there was a real heart. All the crying, all the love that she was giving me came from a place of hopelessness, and I did not recognize it as that. I thought it came from a place of sincerity. Maintaining long-term friends or relationships is difficult for a narcissistic woman as she feels everyone is jealous of her. See, this is where I was thrown a curveball. I had been with her for 6 years. And usually narcissists aren't capable of lasting that long, right? Her previous relationship had also, according to her, lasted 8 years. She even had a house with him. I didn't think anyone could last that long. It still boggles my mind. Since she is vain and considers herself superior to others, she refrains from acknowledging others' achievements over hers, which often damages her relationships. For instance, she keeps tracking how many people like or leave comments on her social media posts. And for those who do not, she claims they are jealous of her. Very true. So that ring that I got her, the one that she ended up picking out, she only gave me 2 options. They were pretty much the same diamond. She would tell me through our entire 2-year marriage how everyone was copying her. Just because she picked this ring, now it becomes popular. It's like, she kept telling me, it's like I'm always on the front end of every trend. I don't get why people just copy me. I knew exactly what she was doing there, and it made me sick. It made me sick. It made me start realizing what I was in. Now, at that point, we have a son on the way, and we're about to get a house. I was already screwed, and anyone that has gone through a divorce process and there's a child involved or any assets, you're done. I stayed in it too long, but the risk to leave is massive, and I was right to fear that because of what happened. Number 12, she withholds sex as a punishment. I've already described that. She blamed that on me too, saying that I wouldn't have sex with her, when in reality, after she banished me to the couch, she wanted me to come right back in like I was this dirty little dog. I said, don't treat me like this. I'm not going to be treated this way. I was met with hitting and violence and fits of rage. I said, until we get help, I even suggested marriage counseling. I can't have romantic relations with you. This made her irate. She knew she was in the wrong but couldn't admit it. I honestly wanted to work things out with her. She knew that and took that as a point of weakness and vulnerability. She acted as if we had worked things out and we had one of the best conversations we had ever had since our marriage. She humbled herself and let me know why she was acting the way she was. And again, it went right back to her sister. She explained it in a way that I still can't even remember, but it was so cunning. It was so clever. We ended up having relations and had our son. Number 13, she is addicted to social media. Absolutely. Every single minute of every single day. Posting. Her father owned a dry cleaners. She would be posting on that every single day and saying how good she was at it, and told me she was getting paid for that part-time, only working 1 day a week. Found out later after the divorce that she was getting paid full-time salary. So all the money I was giving her for groceries and diapers, which started out at about $200 a week, ended up, during the separation, going up to about $1,400 a week sometimes, averaging between $800 and $900 a week. I ended up having to block the joint credit card because it was, I was still renovating the house at the same time. I was going broke. She was draining our savings. It was our savings. We didn't have a joint bank account because she was very bad with money. And I told her, let's try the joint bank credit card first. And I was smart to do so. I was able to block it, and then she immediately started claiming I was financially abusive. I'm not going to read the social media one. I think that's a given. Number 14, she is passive aggressive with everything. Some narcissists are passive aggressive. It says some. Everything was passive aggressive until after we were married and she took the mask off, and then everything was so overt behind closed doors. But in public, it was extremely passive aggressive. To keep ignoring your calls and texts. After a trivial disagreement, all disagreements were brought up by her. I just wanted peace. That's all I wanted. I begged her for peace. So, that being stated, that's a good psychological outline of the behavioral traits and the characteristics. But I don't hear a lot of people talk about this. But the Bible also describes these behavioral traits very well, actually. In fact, Jesus calls out the Pharisees and Sadducees constantly in the New Testament. And some of the methods they were using that were described are very similar to how narcissism operates in the public eye. Paul even mentions it in the New Testament. And he calls it a depraved mind, a depraved mind. In the Bible, a depraved mind, or debased, reprobate mind, describes a corrupted state where people reject God. When we got together, she was sending me Bible verses before we were married, giving me Bible verses on marriage and how happy she was and loved God and loved that we were both. I had left the faith and returned after meeting her, and she was right on board with it for 6 years. After the marriage, though, she proclaimed her hate for God and kept telling me how stupid I was for ever believing it. And believing her. Imagine someone doing that right in front of you. Laughing at you and saying you're so stupid that you believed me. How dumb are you? I got to hear that every single night. It describes a corrupted state where people reject God, leading to a complete loss of moral discernment, resulting in pervasive wickedness like envy, murder, deceit, and hatred, as detailed in Romans 1, chapter 1, verse 28 through 32, where God gives them over to such a mind as a consequence of their willful turning away from Him. Some people don't even realize they're doing that, I believe. In fact, I believe most don't recognize that's what's happened. Whether you're the one that has been turned over or recognize when someone has been turned over. But I'm just going to read it. Romans chapter 1, verses 28 through 32. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, which she would ask me questions about the Bible after we got married. And I was very honest with her. I'm not a scholar, but I had the Spirit of the Lord working in me, and I was able to explain things in a way that she had told me she had never heard it that way. And while we were dating, she said that's what led her back to it, and she would always thank me for it. It turned into her despising me and hating me for what I was saying. I wasn't being aggressive with it. I wasn't being judgmental by any means. But I was scrutinized and hated for it. So God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. Malice is a big one. Everything through the divorce was malicious. I've never experienced someone so malicious. She loved to see my pain and agony as she would employ and manipulate people around her, what psychologists call flying monkeys. And it would work. And she'd love to come check on me hourly and then tell me how she's concerned for my mental well-being. And if she would say this a lot, if I would just stop fighting with her, it would all go away. She would say it just like that with a smirk on her face. She would then turn on Billie Eilish, I'm the bad guy. And as she sang the part, Make Your Mama Sad type, she would be smirking at me and laughing and dancing with our son in her arms. If I tried to leave, she would block me into a corner and start punching me. Sounds like I'm making this up, right? I wish I was. The last time she hit me, she did it with a closed fist, and the engagement ring diamond left a mark right behind my ear, right here. She clocked me. Now, I was fine. I've always laughed this stuff off. I've had violent women in my life. I have. It's actually not that rare. I don't know why most people act like it's not a thing, but it definitely is. I ended up staying at hotels for about a month. A whole month. Not only was I paying for a renovation, paying for her increased joint credit card bills, which I eventually blocked during that time, I was paying for hotels. I was going completely broke, but the only thing I could do was stay away. She immediately started to say that I abandoned the family. And every attorney I spoke to said that, advised me to go back, which I eventually did. I don't think that was the right decision, and honestly, attorneys, when you're going through this, especially if you're a guy, don't listen to them. They have no idea what they're talking about. I even specifically hired my first attorney who claimed that he was very well familiar with narcissism. Everything that he did hurt me in the proceedings, and I did fire him. I went through 3 attorneys. They all went along with her representation every single time, fell right to it. I was treated like the criminal, like the liar. Unbelievable. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips. She continually would call my sister. And even my sister started to scold me and retroman me for the things that she was telling her that were completely untrue about me. And I still don't have a relationship with her today. As a result, I had to cut her off. She cut me off, actually, and I allowed for it. She still doesn't get why my ex-wife doesn't talk to her anymore. She's still in shock, like, what happened? Still, and still scolds me. It's unbelievable. I had mental breakdowns twice. They weren't mental. Emotional breakdowns. I looked up the science behind that. Where I broke down and blacked out from the anguish I was going through. I couldn't believe someone could be so evil during all this. She was withholding our son from me for weeks. It really wore down on me. I was getting no sleep. She was keeping me up late at night, and I had to wake up early to go to work every morning. I took maybe 7 days off during the entire renovation. total. Most of them were when I had Lyme disease and COVID. And I broke down, and I don't even remember what I said, but she sent the recording. She recorded me. I had no idea she was recording. She sent it to my family members, including my sister. I listened to it, and it sounded terrible. It sounded horrible. I was saying every single messed up thing she ever called me back to her in that video. The only thing I remember is sitting in a chair, bobbing up and down with my head between my hands. She sat down next to me and apologized for putting me through that. When in reality, she was sending that recording to my family members to make me look like I was a violent, terrible person. I don't even think it was I don't know if it was a video or I know it was a video. She also took another recording where she just did a voice recording. I had 2 of these breakdowns before I started staying at hotels. It was all within I think 1 week. I had a moment of weakness. I held out for so long, and I never did it again after that either. I am human. I'm not perfect. I've never had anybody break me like that. I've never had anyone break me like that. I've never known anyone that would even want to, and she found pleasure in it. She used that as a method or leverage against me, telling me that she was going to use that, and all I had to do was submit to her, and it would all go away, as she kept putting it. But they are gossips, slanderers, God haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. That couldn't be more true. In Titus chapter 1, verse 16, they profess that they know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable and disobedient, and unto every good work reprobate. Couldn't be more accurate. So what are the characteristics of those with a reprobate mind? They resist truth. They invent evil things. I couldn't believe the types of traps that she was setting for me. She would set them up weeks in advance, and I wouldn't fully know it until after she acted them out. The laptop that I mentioned that she took, she refused to give it back. And all I wanted to do was take the information off, and I was going to let her keep it. I have all this in text messages, but she refused to even admit that she took it. Now, since the divorce was already in place, you're not supposed to take property from the premises. So I figured she left it in the house. I left work early one afternoon to go home while she was quote unquote at work, which she actually was that day. She wasn't lying that day. I went home and took about 30 minutes to look for it, and I could not find it. She had cameras set up all over the house where I slept and the entrance, so she could monitor the house. I did not have access to these cameras, but I knew they were there, and I knew she was monitoring me and showing her parents, who were also monitoring me. I ended up sneaking through the back door and covering one with a piece of tape to see if that would prevent it from getting triggered, to make her realize that I was at the house, which would give me time to actually find this laptop and do what I needed to do. Couldn't find the laptop. I left. When I left, I was going back to work. She passed me coming to the house from where she was working, the dry cleaners, the one that Daddy owns. I didn't know if that was coincidence or not, but I found out it wasn't. She was withholding our son from me for days on end, to a point where she kept telling me I was home too late, which is why she made his bedtime at like 7 o'clock. It used to be at 8, then it went to 7:30, then it went to 7. Well, I came home the next day at 6:30 just so I could at least just say goodnight to him. I recorded this. She went to her room. She said, no, it's his bedtime. I said, that's enough. And she immediately called her daddy and started saying that I was threatening her and I was scaring her. I kept my voice very calm. She ended up calling Daddy, who apparently told her that to allow me to say goodnight to our son. Isn't that great? I spent 15 minutes with him till 6:30, handed him back to find her dad standing in my kitchen, our kitchen. He got right in my face and started calling me a liar because he asked me why I was breaking into my house and crawling through the window to terrify our son and her. I asked him what he was talking about. He treated me like a liar. He was even bumping his chest up against me and screaming at me. I did not retaliate, but I did raise my voice. I told Paige to please leave the room with our son. I didn't want him to hear it. She kept returning. I eventually said, let's go outside and talk about this. I realized that they might take that as me wanting to fight them after I left the house to go out in the back lawn. I felt very uncomfortable, and I felt like they were plotting against me because they both stayed in there for about 10 minutes. So I called the cops to get them to remove her father, who smelled like alcohol. He drinks every single night. Business owner. He gets away with it. They ended up, she had been threatening me for months beforehand, saying that they're friends with a cop from the department of the village that we were living in. And she kept saying he couldn't wait to get his hands on me, is how she put it. So every time we would get in a fight, every time she would try to start a fight, I would try to leave and she would try to hit me. I would claim, and if I ever caught her getting drunk with our son in her care, I said I would call the police and handle it the right way. Well, she told me exactly what she would do if I were to do that. She would claim that I was abusing her, letting me know that all she has to do is smash her face up against the counter or the wall, and there's nothing I could do about it to get out of that. And you know what? She was right. For some reason, she didn't do that when I called the police this time, and I think it's because her father was there. So thank God for that. However, after I called the police, this sergeant showed up and and treated me like a complete lying criminal. Kept saying that I broke into my own house to terrify our son and Kevin's daughter. Oh, sorry, my ex-wife. Treated me like a criminal. I asked them to show me the evidence. It was me putting the tape over the camera. I didn't break through into our house. I had a key. I opened the back door. I showed him the key. I go, what are you talking about? But he was trying to implicate me, clearly. He's trying to get me to leave the premises, which I refused. How dare he? I ended up having the lieutenant of the department do an internal investigation within a year after that happened. And according to this sergeant's witness, he was very dishonest. And it was his reputation against mine, so obviously I don't... And the families, by the way. So it didn't matter what I said. I was still pegged as a liar, even though I'm literally witnessing these people lie to protect my ex-wife. Call those flying monkeys. Very dangerous ones. So they resist truth, they invent evil things, they disobey parents, break covenants, lack understanding, hate God, are spiteful, proud, and boastful, give approval to those who practice wickedness, even knowing they deserve death. So there you go. So this might sound terrifying, and this was all outside of the church or any church. I wasn't going to church at that point. I grew up in one, and I was praying every single night on where he wanted me to go. Let him lead me. And I wasn't getting any answers, so I didn't just go to church. I am now, and I'm thankful for that, and I believe I've been led by his spirit. But at the time, I was not. But since all this experience that I've had through my 20s, meeting multiple girls like this, by the way, my current ex was the worst. Absolute most terrifying. Got away with all of that. still fighting the manipulation tactics, the malicious behavior that is masked as concerning, as being concerned for me and concern for our son now, who's being used as a pawn through all this malicious behavior. And still fooling the professionals that are involved, whom I still think are pretty close with her family and will do whatever it takes to protect them. Even if they don't know about it, that makes them ignorant. It doesn't make it right. I did the best I could with what I was given, especially with the 3 attorneys I went through, and all I got was more heartache and punishments for being responsible and doing the right thing and trying to protect our son in all this. Definitely can't do that alone. If it wasn't for the Lord's help, I don't know how anyone could withstand everything that I just said, and I know I couldn't. I couldn't do it without his guidance. In fact, with his spirit, I clung to him during this time. I'd go on walks for hours before I'd go home just to minimize conflict and pray and read the Bible, listen to it. And he would literally reveal the stuff that was about to happen to me before it happened. I don't know how else to explain that, but it was like he was preparing me for some of the worst things you could possibly imagine. I didn't want them to be true. I didn't think they were true. I thought it was maybe me just being paranoid. But in reality, it would happen. It would actually happen. So it was like he was preparing me for it, which allowed me to just cling to him because I knew what hopeless of a situation I was up against. And to focus on our son's needs and getting him in a place of security and stability as much as I possibly could. And that's still my focus. I think I've shielded him from a lot. Obviously, I couldn't shield him from her hitting me with him in her arms when we were in the house. And actually, the only issues we've had with him, he's growing up, the only issues that I've really had with him was him hitting, thinking that was okay. And he's doing a lot better with that now. But he still struggles with that one. I can still see the confusion on his face. Now, you can say that's how every kid is. Well, that's not true. Not every kid is like that. And the way he reacted when I would tell him no was the same look he would have on his face when he was holding her and she was hitting me. It was like he didn't know what was happening. He didn't know if it was good or not either. It was a look of confusion. Almost like his makes me want to cry. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is because now that I'm going to church again, I've noticed that this same influence has, especially with females, has infiltrated the churches. I'm not talking about any specific church, but I have noticed the way the female covert narcissist acts. I've noticed who they target. They use people in powerful positions in their favor to target their victims by playing a victim to the people that are in these powerful positions. They love religion. They love Christianity because it's one of the best masks. Not only is it a great mask, but they can see the naivety of those that lead in these positions that seem to be very unaware of the manipulation tactics being employed against them, using them as a pawn to give them a seat at the table. In fact, that reminds me of Revelations chapter 2, verse 20 through 23. It says, "Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. I have given her time to repent of her immorality, but she is unwilling. So I will cast her on a bed of suffering, and I will make those who commit adultery with her suffer intensely, unless they repent of her ways. I will strike her children dead. Then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds." So giving a seat to Jezebel, if you do a study on the spirit of Jezebel, there's a lot of information out there on it that's very accurate. What they're really describing is a spirit that seeks to control, that seeks to attack others, to kill God's children, to oppress with passive aggression by playing victim, by pulling on the heartstrings of those that lead to act on their behalf at the detriment of whoever their target is, whom they claim to be victim of. They show false humility and victimhood. They present themselves as insecure, shy, or downtrodden, using perceived suffering to gain sympathy and attention. This works very well in the church. They have hidden grandiosity. Beneath the surface, they feel superior and special, but express it indirectly, often through subtle boasts or entitlement. They'll give you glimpses if you're really close to them and they feel like no one else is watching. Sometimes the mask slips a little bit. But if they're very cunning, they won't even allow for that. And some are that cunning. They have intense envy, deeply envious of others' success. So you become a target if you have confidence, if you are successful. If you ever try to criticize this person, you are in the crosshairs. And how dare you? They might show that to you, but their whole audience will never see that side of them. They mask it with compliments or passive-aggressive digs, their intense envy. They have extreme sensitivity to criticism. They react poorly to perceived slights, often withdrawing, sulking, or becoming passive-aggressive, or malignant, which is also a good study. In my marriage, I truly believe she went malignant. It went from covert narcissism to malignance and maliciousness. Overt maliciousness. At least when we were behind closed doors. Passive-aggressive behavior expresses resentment and anger indirectly through procrastination, subtle sabotage. Sabotage is continual. Or backhanded compliments. So since I was married to this person, sabotage was a huge part of it. She would want to control every aspect of every decision that was made. If there was any mistakes that she made, which were there were many, she would then say I was the one that made them, and also say that I was being malicious by doing so. To sabotage my reputation, my character, and it worked. It worked so well. Still working. Manipulation through vulnerability uses displays of despair or helplessness to control others and get their needs met, like when I called the cops. She immediately played the victim and said I was terrifying her and our son by breaking into our house by showing him a screenshot from the camera from 5 days prior when I left work early. Can you believe that? So when the cop showed me that screenshot, I said, "Do you have a date on there?" I go, "When is this from?" I really thought I wasn't on camera at all at that point. I didn't even know. Unbelievable. Lack of reciprocity, wants attention and validation but offers little emotional support, making relationships one-sided. Absolutely. Sense of entitlement? Yes. Believes life and others owe them special consideration, feeling deeply resentful when they don't receive it. And they won't show you that. They will not show you that. They will hide that, especially from their audience and those they're trying to use to attack their new target. How it appears in relationships. There's a draining dynamics. There's draining dynamics. You might feel constantly walking on eggshells or responsible for their unstable emotions, which I initially did. I can say that. I felt responsible for her unstable emotions because I was being insensitive to the tragedy that her and her family went through that led to her having very tough days of grieving, which I definitely sympathized with. Looking back now, that was stupid. Isolation tactics may subtly try to separate you from friends and family who she perceives as threats or who you see through her facade. She did that with my immediate family. She successfully did that with my sister. She tried to do that by creating a story about my brother, a very disgusting and perverted story. She told the story 4 different times to me and my parents, and the details got more exaggerated and changed every single time. Let me know that that was the first time I knew she was capable of lying. And this was after we had our son. This was after I bought the house. This was after I got a new position in the career I was in, high paying job. And this was the first time she mentioned she wanted a divorce and said that I wasn't backing up my wife, is how she liked to say it. I don't back anyone up if they're lying and I know it. I'll never do that. I don't care who you are. I will say that. How about not lying? You shouldn't have to lie. In fact, that hurts people. You shouldn't be doing that. You should live by truth. Even, I know it's easier said than done, but that's how we should all be living our lives. I fully believe that. I know that is not everyone's belief. I'm fully aware of that. But I will not be supporting someone that I know is actively lying, especially to separate me from my own family, my own blood. Like, who does that? When it's not even based in reality, when it's not true. How insane is that tactic to completely isolate me? She had already successfully isolated me from all my friends, my previous friends, from most of my family at that point, which I was already having issues with in my 20s because I decided to part ways, you know? She almost had me completely isolated. She was this close. She only had a few people left before I found out that she was legitimately a pathological liar. But only would lie about things that would benefit an agenda, a specific agenda. And she was honest about most of the details that most people recognized, which lended her credibility. And that's the deception in it. They're that clever. A good one is that clever. Unbelievable. A covert narcissist is incredibly clever when it comes to hiding this behavior. And from my research, it seems as if most covert narcissists have been narcissists for a while. And they go covert because at some point in their life they had a narcissistic collapse. A narcissistic collapse is usually when someone calls them out for their behavior and they implode. They literally implode because they recognize that they're being called out for their behavior. They're not getting away with it. So they hide it. They learn how to wear a mask. And it only comes out to their targets when they're isolated. And they know that they have them where they want them. Where they know they can control the opinions of anyone involved around them, leaving you helpless to whatever story that they can create about you. So isolation tactics. They may subtly try to separate you from friends. Subtly is an understatement. I had no idea she was texting people from my phone even. I had no idea she was talking to neighbors and doing this. I had no idea. She hid that from me very well. Telling them that I don't want to hang out with anyone and that I'm too aggressive and violent. That I didn't like people. That I didn't like hanging out with anybody. That's what I found out through the neighbor. And that's only one example. One person that didn't even know me. May subtly try to separate you from friends and family who she perceives as threats or who see through her facade. I think I already read that. So, shifting blame. Rarely takes responsibility, instead blaming external factors or other people for their problems. All the time, every single day. Once the mask came off, everything was my fault no matter how terrible her actions were. And I have a ton of examples for that, but I've already spent way too much time on this. If anyone out there is dating someone that can relate to any of these behavioral traits, do not ignore them. And if you bring them up to the person that you are suspecting, they will be able to convince you that you are crazy and actually insensitive and even mean for bringing something like that up. That means you have trust issues. I can almost guarantee you that's where it'll go. But these manipulation tactics, some of them are so clever, eventually the blame is going to be shifted to you. The tables always turn. If you question anything that may be pointing out a truth that they are trying to conceal from you, always be prepared for feeling guilty at the end of that conversation. The guilt will go back to you every single time. That is the biggest red flag in my book. Don't be fooled. And cling to God, because if you're married to someone like this, I don't blame you for not getting divorced after what I just went through. I'm still going through. But it's still, I can honestly say this now, it's still 10 times better than being in that house for 1 hour with her. And I've had a relationship with our son since. I get to spend 50% of my week with him every single week. I am more than grateful for that. It's way more time, and I get to spend time with him alone, not with her telling me what I can and can't do and then blaming me for things that I have never done or even thought of doing, to implicate me in stuff that was not only terrible, some of it perverted even, irresponsible. There are no ends or limits to how far they will go if they're not getting their way with you. And if they are have a higher status in the community and have connections and flying monkeys that are in powerful positions, I get why you wouldn't want to divorce someone like that. But I can still say it was the right decision. It should have been done sooner, of course. I do not regret having our son. That's the best thing that's ever happened to me, hands down, besides getting saved, because I wouldn't be able to help my son at all if I did not ask the Lord, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, into my heart. If I didn't know he was real, if he didn't guide me out of that, which he surely did. He guided me out of that mess. He saved me, not only from my sin, but he saved me from those attacks and potentially something way worse than what would even happen. And what I described is just, I'm skimming the surface. I'm skimming the surface of what happened. I kept quite the document trail. I have hours and hours of video documenting this behavior. It was absolute insanity. It was absolute evil. That's the only way to describe it. There are no other words I could use that would be even close to being accurate enough. But at this point, I trust in the Lord. The battle is his. I know that now. It is spiritual. She has most recently said that she will not allow me to bring our son to church. I have already disagreed with that and informed her that I will continue bringing him to church. That is not her decision. I do not tell her what she can and can't do on her time. I will leave that open to keep stability for our son. But it's in the Lord's hands now. I know that. And he fights for his children, just like I'm fighting for mine. So I hope this helps somebody that needs it. I know that's a lot of crazy information. I know most people might even think I'm making some of it up. I can tell you this, I didn't make up one single detail. I've left out a lot more than what I've said here. I've left out a lot more of what happened than what I've said. And what I left out, you wouldn't believe it. If you didn't believe what I've said, you would not believe what else has happened. So I hope this helps someone. Not only that's in it, but someone to avoid it.